Teaching skills. Concept checking. What are concept check questions? When we want, for example, to pre-teach Lexis before, say, a reading or listening lesson, many teachers ask students to match a new word, used in context, to a definition. Even if the students manage to do this successfully, this will not always check students' understanding of that word in enough detail. Beyond the matching task, it's a good idea to use concept check questions to make sure students have a firm grasp of the meaning. So, concept check questions, or CCQs, are a series of questions which you need to ask right after you introduce or elicit a grammar structure, a word, or a phrase, and are designed to ensure comprehension of the target language, raise awareness of its problems, and indicate to the teacher that the students have fully understood. Checking understanding enables the teacher not only to assess whether the students have understood and/or can use the language he or she wanted to present, but also helps smooth out any points of confusion. Good concept check questions require a depth of analytical and intuitive understanding of what we are trying to check. A good teacher will avoid the questions, "Do you understand? Is that clear? Okay." These questions are all ineffective. Students are likely to answer yes, because they don't want to embarrass the teacher, they don't want to lose face and admit they don't understand, are bored and want to move on, or worse, think they know it, but in reality may have misunderstood the actual meaning or concept. So here are some examples of CCQs for Lexis and CCQs for grammar. For the word cozy, the CCQs get directly to the heart of the word's meaning, which is of warmth and comfort. The last two questions give the students a chance to personalize this concept by asking them how this word can relate to their own experiences. It's important to note here that we wouldn't ask those last two questions, which is the coziest room in your house and why, first. Why not? Pause the video and discuss this with your partner or group now. We wouldn't ask these two questions first, because we first need to ascertain that the students have understood what cozy means in the first place. The last two questions help to deepen their understanding of the word by applying it in a personal context. We add in the question, why, because their initial answer might be a little unexpected. They might say the kitchen, as opposed to the more expected response of bedroom or living room. But their reason for this could be valid. Perhaps their kitchen is small, warm, bright, always smells of delicious things, and is where the family always gather. For the structure, I've been to Paris, we need to ensure that the students have understood that at the time of saying this person is no longer in Paris, that them going to Paris happened sometime in the past, but we don't know when, and it's probably not important to know when. These are then turned into the corresponding CCQs you see on the screen now. Look at these examples of concept check questions for structures, and what the answers for these are. Think about how they lead the students to grasp the meaning and use of the structure. Pause the video and discuss these with your group or partner now. If your students have understood the meaning of the various structures, they would be able to correctly answer the CCQs. Let's take the first one. If you hadn't woken up late, we wouldn't have missed the train. This is an example of the third conditional. The CCQs you ask would target their understanding of the structure as a hypothetical concept. They may have misunderstood this to mean, you didn't wake up late, so we didn't miss the train. Or, if you wake up late, we will miss the train. Or any number of other possible misconstrued meanings. So let's get to the various truths of the sentence. This happened in the past. My friend woke up late. We missed the train. We can't change this because it has already happened. And because this is hypothetical, it isn't real. So the CCQs we construct for this sentence immediately get the students thinking about the fundamental meanings of the structure. Concept check questions themselves are often difficult to construct, since they involve clarifying function and meaning using simple language, but not the target language itself. Apart from their classroom value, thinking of good questions also helps less experienced teachers to understand the complexities of form, function, and meaning, and to practice grading their language. Some basic tips for good CCQs are: make sure the questions are short and simple, and that no difficult language is required to answer the question. They should be easy to answer in 1 or 2 words. Yes or no questions, either or questions, and simple WH questions are particularly effective. Your CCQs should not contain vocabulary or structures that are unfamiliar or more difficult than what we're trying to check. Don't use the target language structure in your questions. It's their meaning that we're trying to ensure they understand. Ensure you plan them in advance, and it's best to include them in your lesson plan with expected answers. And you want to make sure the CCQs only check the target language and nothing else in the sentence. You can bring out basic concepts such as time and tense in your questions, and try to use a range of CCQs to check various aspects of the language and to cover as many learners as possible. So here's an example of some CCQs and how they might be ineffective, as they may give rise to misunderstandings. Now, with your partner or group, come up with some CCQs which you feel might be more effective than the techniques shown here. Pause the video and discuss this now. So here are some more effective CCQs that can be asked for these lectures. Here's a famous example from an International House CELTA course, which uses the target language in the concept check questions. The CCQs do not get the actual concept behind this expression, which is to say that someone is very confused, usually because they're very busy. A better one for this might be, was he busy? And to personalize it, you could ask the students, have you felt like this before? When and why? Concept checking Lexis. One way of beginning to think about concept check questions is to break the meaning of a word or structure into components. Here are some examples of the concepts included in the word bedsit. Questions may be of different types. Yes or no questions. Is a bedsit a room? Are there other rooms in a bedsit? Can you sleep in it? 50-50 questions. Is it a room or a building? Is it cheap or expensive? Do you buy it or pay money every week or month? Information questions. Who lives in it? How many people live in it? Discrimination questions. Do you only sleep in it? Can you cook a meal in it? Is it the same as a flat? Shared experience questions. Is there a bedsit in this building? Life experience or culture questions. Have you ever lived in a bedsit? Are there bedsits in your city or country? And remember that the answers sometimes, it depends, and I don't know can tell you as much as yes or no. And here's a list of some CCQs to check students' understanding of Lexis. More can be found in the table on page 2 of your task sheet. So here's a word followed by 4 concept check questions and their anticipated answers in brackets. One of the concept check questions is not really relevant or necessary to checking the meaning of the word. With your group or partner, decide which concept check question for the word mope can be deleted. So the one you probably thought was unnecessary was the question, do dogs mope? So now, look at task A on your worksheet. There are 4 lexical items here: fade, shuffle, make off, and critique, which come with 4 concept check questions and their anticipated answers. Just like with this example with the word mope, one is not really necessary to check the word's meaning. With your partner or group, complete the accompanying quiz on Edmodo by choosing the CCQ which can be deleted. Now it's your turn to think of some CCQs. Here's another discussion task you should do with your peers. Look at the items on this list. We have a few individual words and 1 phrasal verb. With your partner or group, pause the video and try to think of CCQs you can ask for each of the items. Note them down, and after you've done each one, continue the video to look at some suggested CCQs. So here are some suggested CCQs for embarrassed. Is this a good feeling? No. Are you worried about what other people will think? Yes. Does your face sometimes go red? Yes. For the phrasal verb put up with, we've got, do you put up with a thing or a person or both? Do you like this thing or person? Do you accept the thing or person? Are you patient or impatient? For substitute, the noun, we've got, if you need a substitute, can you use what you normally use? Do you use something new and different? Is it the same as the original? Can a person be a substitute as well as a thing? And finally, for reclaim, the verb, some suggested CCQs are, did someone take something from you in the past? When you reclaim something, do you want to get it back? Can you reclaim something that someone borrowed? Can you reclaim land? Of course, you probably have some other ideas which you can add to this list. So now we're going to look at ways of concept checking grammar. These types of CCQs focus on the key ideas of grammatical meaning. Some grammar forms have different uses, and when checking grammatical meaning, you should only check one use at a time. Normally, this will be related to the context you have used to teach the grammar. One way of constructing concept check questions is by writing a sentence containing all the elements of the concept from which questions can be formed. This is a useful method when distinguishing between 2 functions of the same structure, particularly where those functions would be expressed by different forms or tenses in other languages. For example, let's have a look at these 2 sentences. They're both in the present perfect continuous, but express different functions. Look at the sentence, he's been eating garlic. The function here is about making a presumption about what someone had been doing prior to the moment of speaking, usually based on some kind of evidence. So the concept is, he isn't eating garlic now, and I didn't see him eating it, but I know he was eating garlic because I can smell it. Look at the sentence, Harry's been working here for 2 years. This function is to talk about someone's present circumstances, but connecting it to a time in the past. The concept is, he started working here 2 years ago, he's still working here, and he'll probably continue working here. So you can see, same structure, 2 different functions. CCQs help us realize whether the students have understood the nuances of the particular context the grammar point is exemplifying. Now you try. Let's just take the second sentence. Harry's been working here for 2 years. The concept behind this is, as mentioned before, he started working here 2 years ago, he's still working here, and he'll probably continue working here. So now turn those into questions. When did he start working here? Is he still working here? Will he continue to work here? Now try this one. We've given you the target structure. If I won the lottery, I'd buy a new car. We've given you the concept. This is an imaginary situation. I haven't won the lottery, and I am probably not going to win the lottery. I'm not actually going to buy a new car. So the CCQs and anticipated answers are as follows. Is this real or imaginary? Have I won the lottery? Am I going to win the lottery? Am I going to buy a new car? Now look at Task B of your worksheet. You can see these 5 structures, and below them, a list of 15 CCQs. 3 of them go with one of the 5 structures, and there is also a suggested order in which you should ask them. Work on this task with your group or partner, and then check your answers against the key on the next slide. Pause the video and do this now. When you've finished, resume. And here are the answers. As you may remember from the cozy example before, there are sometimes occasions where the order of the CCQs you ask is important. It's best to CCQ the most important meanings first. Now look at Task C of your worksheet. There are 5 sentences with underlined grammar structures. Write CCQs and their answers for each structure. Write a maximum of 3 questions for each one. Remember, try to create a sentence or sentences which contain all the relevant elements of the concept from which you can create questions. When you're done, post your suggested answers on the associated Edmodo forum. Some other ways of checking understanding are using pictures. You could ask a question like, which one shows the word? Timelines. Which timeline fits this sentence? Miming or demonstrating, but get the students to do this. Synonyms, antonyms, definitions, examples, and translation. Which translation is the closest in meaning? And of course, this is only relevant for teachers who know the student's L1. Translation can sometimes provide the final check of understanding, but the word or phrase may involve an idea, a concept, a behavior, or even a value which may be alien to our learners, even in their own native language, either because they're too young, or their language does not express the notion in the same way, or for cultural reasons. As a final task on this, a quick quiz on the do's and don'ts of CCQs. Pause the video and do this with your group or partner now. And here are the answers. Don't ask students, what does X mean? It can be really hard for the student to do this and puts him or her on the spot. Knowing the concept is more important than being able to provide a definition. Don't forget to use CCQs in your lessons when teaching new grammar and vocabulary. Asking CCQs is an indispensable tool for teachers to check understanding. Do prepare your CCQs in advance and put them in your lesson plan with anticipated answers. It's hard to think of CCQs on the spot. You want to make sure you've considered potentially tricky words for students in advance. This shows good planning and that you've thought carefully about the language you're introducing to your learners. Do decide what answers you expect. Don't repeat the target grammar structure in the CCQ. Do use language simpler than the target language. Do use yes or no questions or questions with one-word answers. Remember that CCQs should be simple. Do make sure you're checking only the target language in your CCQ. Do use a grammar book or student dictionary to help you understand the meaning. And don't have too many questions. While we cannot overstate the importance of CCQs, there is also such a thing as overkill. Once you're convinced the students have grasped the concept of the word or structure, move on. Keep this stage snappy. In this input, you've focused on concept checking questions to check our students' understanding of lexis and grammar. You've looked at what they are, what they should be, what characterizes effective and ineffective CCQs, and ways to construct them. You've looked at some examples, and for Task A, there is the accompanying quiz on Edmodo on which each group should submit their answers. You'll also discuss with your groups how to come up with some effective CCQs for the structures in Task C of the worksheet. This week on Edmodo, we will open a forum thread for each group to post your suggested CCQs with accompanying answers for this task. Once each group has submitted theirs, we'll post the suggested answers. So moving forward, if possible, focus on how you ask concept check questions in your next lessons. Use the information in this input and plan your future CCQs carefully. If you have only ever tried one method, try others and report back on how well they worked, or not. You're going to discuss this input in your next OT. By now, you should be familiar with what you need to prepare. Organize your notes, highlight key information, concepts and terms you've learned, prepare any questions or comments that you want to raise with the OT group. And if you are able to incorporate these ideas in your teaching practice, make some notes of any insights you'd like to share. Thanks for watching, and see you at the next OT.